and I was really apprehensive. I'm starting to ask questions now. What the heck happened? What caused this explosion in our family? And I'm asking her, and I'm saying, with all of the billions of dollars in the pharmaceutical industry, there must be a better answer, because these medications aren't working on him, or medication. In this case, it was lithium. And my daughter Autumn, I explained, is on 5 medications. You've already mentioned them: Haldol, Rivotril, Epival, Cogentin, and it's not helping. And her second home is the psychiatric ward. There must be a better answer than this. And she said, no, there isn't. And we're going to have to increase his medications and try different cocktails to see if we can sedate him. Well, sedation isn't the answer. I want him whole. And I kept on pushing that with her. And she finally said, Mrs. Stephan, I want you and Joseph to go out in the waiting room and close the door, please. And when that door closed, it was like a bomb going off in my face, a shotgun, whatever. Mr. Stephan, you don't get it. What you see is what you've got, and you are not going to change this paradigm, and you better understand that. And I want you to know something clear, Mr. Stephan. You understand. He's got a predisposition to suicide, just like his mother and his grandfather, and you need to be prepared for that.
Welcome to True Hope Cast, the official podcast of True Hope Canada. Today marks a very special moment in our history. 30 years ago, what began as a desperate search for answers inside one family became a discovery that will go on to impact hundreds of thousands of lives around the world. This episode is the first of a 3-part anniversary series reflecting on that journey. In this conversation, True Hope founder Anthony Stephan sits down with his son David Stephan, Vice President of Truehope Canada, for an open and deeply personal discussion. Together, they revisit the family's early struggles with severe mental illness, including bipolar disorder and schizophrenia, and the life-altering realization they encountered in the 1990s that the brain, when deprived of essential nutrition, can suffer profoundly, and that restoring those nutrients can change absolutely everything. This is not a polished corporate original story. It's a raw account of trial and error, resistance, hope, setbacks, breakthroughs, and faith, and how a nutritional discovery inside one household grew into an organization now known as True Hope, challenging conventional thinking about mental health for 3 decades. In part 1, we focus on the early years, the crisis that forced difficult questions, the discovery that reshaped their understanding of mental illness, and the foundation upon which everything that followed was built. This is the story of how True Hope began, told by the people who lived it. Welcome to the True Hope 30th Anniversary Special Part 1.
All right, it's January 2026. It's now been 30 years since the discovery of True Hope, which has gone on to bless hundreds of thousands of lives across the world. We're here in your beautiful homestead in central BC, up on the side of a mountain overlooking a beautiful lake, a very humble homestead as well, though, very down to earth, and it just has a lovely feeling. I'm sure the cameras kind of pick up the whole concept there, Dad. And, we just want to talk today about the previous 30 years. 30 years since a life-transforming discovery was made. And there's a phenomenal story to it, a story that's become the subject of multiple documentaries. One particular documentary really making its way across the world, which put True Hope on the map, which is a real beautiful thing for people across the world. So, Dad, let's rewind a little bit here. Let's go back. Maybe even before 30 years, I was a young child. I didn't know what normal was. I didn't know what normal wasn't. All I knew was what I was born into, what I grew up with, and came to realize later on that we were a peculiar family. Why don't you maybe tell us a little bit about what family life looked like back in the 70s and 80s?
David, I married your mom young. And it was a wonderful existence until that great, I'm going to call it negative, event occurred where she became ill with bipolar disorder. She was diagnosed with bipolar affective disorder 1 with rapid cycling. Terrifying. It was terrifying for her. It was terrifying for the whole family. And it had some really negative impacts on each and every one of us. And wasn't her fault. I've come to understand that people that suffer with these maladies do so. And it's all too common. We know that it consumes about 20% of the population here in North America.
Mm-hmm.
We understand that. And we've come to understand it's not their fault. Whatever the cause is behind it, and we have some specific thinking there, but it's a terrible impact upon the lives of millions and millions of people throughout the world, not just North America.
Mm-hmm.
And it's had horrendous impacts upon the family. It's very difficult. You ask the question, what was it like with the family? What kind of things were we experiencing? You can't really live and have a happy life when someone is extremely ill with a disorder like that. Bipolar affective disorder 1 with rapid cycling is huge. That's listed as an uncorrectable, irreparable, forever type of a malady.
Right.
There's no cure for it out there. And we were living in a terrible place. And it wasn't your mother's fault. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't the children's fault. It's what it is. And it was very, very, very extreme. Her mood would fluctuate from being high, very high on the manic cycle,
Mm-hmm.
and very, very, very low, very, very depressed. And when you're living with someone like that, that's not normal. It's interesting, and I'll talk about that later on as we go, when we see the effect that this wonderful healing, inspirational thing that came upon us has in the lives of people. But what is normal? What is normal? To some people, that's an everyday experience that becomes normal. And it wasn't until that experience ended that I saw what normality really is.
Right.
Proper emotional stability and control. Her father took his life 16 years before she did. And I had to assist in preparing him for the funeral and doing all these things. I loved him. I remember we used to go ice fishing together. I loved the guy. He was an amazing man. But sadly, he was out of control. And it wasn't his fault. And his family was very, very dysfunctional.
Right. We can see that even in second, third cousins from that side of the family, that it's very prevalent.
True.
In mom's side of the family, the mental illness.
And suicide wasn't out of the question. It wasn't for him. And sadly, your mom ended up in the same state. Of course, you know that. You've lived it. You've lived the trauma, the sorrow of seeing someone that you're so deeply attached to and so deeply in love with, and they disappear into that dark chasm of suicide. And so, yeah, it's very, very abnormal and very dysfunctional. But who's the villain here? And I've come to understand there isn't a villain. We become victims to this thing. And I've watched our children, your siblings, go through various partitioning in the same thing where they've experienced terrifying events in their life that were caused by the same root cause.
And you're talking about mental illness and
Yeah.
And so, for our audience, how many children did you and Mom have?
We had together 9 children. She came from a large family. I came from a large family. That was her dream, to be able to have a lot of children.
And you guys did it.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question. We adopted a young native girl,
So making for 10.
making for 10. And sadly, not only did she suffer with the disorder, but a good percentage of the family struggled as well with their own disorders. We say it's genetic, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But there's no question it travels downhill. There is an inheritance that comes from people
Okay, now there
who
was
struggle with these things.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and we see that, and they call them genetic disorders,
Well, they do, yeah.
which oftentimes in the medical world, when you hear it's a genetic disorder, oftentimes the thought process is, oh, there's nothing you can do about it, but we can give you these medications for the rest of your life, but you will always have it because it's genetic. And we've since come to learn that, and we'll get to that, I guess, a little bit later on here,
Sure.
but that's not actually the truth.
That's true. What you're saying is true.
So there was something that happened that was kind of cataclysmic, if you will, that set things in motion, that would ultimately, as traumatic as it was, would lead to significant triumph down the road. Do you want to tell us about that tragedy that would take place?
Well, on December 30th of 1994, sadly, she affixed...
I wanted January?
Oh, did I say December?
You did, yeah.
Strike that out of there. January 30th of 1994. Sadly, she ended up ending her life. She asphyxiated herself. And it's such a sad thing.
After 22 years of marriage.
Yeah, 23 years of marriage. 23 years of loving somebody and learning how to cope as best as you could with this situation. Wasn't a lot of fun all the time. I know what people experience.
Yeah.
Having been there and seeing the effects and how you feel about your own self, how you begin to question your own stability. You see, because I hate the term mental illness. It sounds like a dungeon term.
Mm-hmm.
And I've come to understand it's not a mental illness at all. In the science, we're going to talk about that in a little while because that's part of the great history of this event, really. But I've come to understand that it's not a dungeon situation in the sense that it doesn't have to be everlasting.
Right.
It doesn't have to carry on day to day. I mean, we're going to talk about that in a little while. But difficult times for many, many people. Many, many people who suffer. Marriages come unglued every day. Our prisons are full of people who suffered the same way as your mother. I remember the George Bush Freedom Commission that was struck a good number of years ago, where they studied the effects of mental issues. Our prisons were over 67% really mental asylums.
Yeah.
People who couldn't control, whose chemistry was out of control, and sadly, they end up in a situation where they're imprisoned.
Yep.
But it's affecting every one of us.
Absolutely.
And a family cannot exist in isolation from a loved one who suffers with these issues because everybody becomes ill.
Yep.
And that's the sad story. That's why there's so much divorce, so much family separation. In many cases, so much hate is expressed within a family because of this uncontrollable situation.
Right. And we even see today the rise of, and this is a term that many people are going to recognize today because it's really become quite pervasive. But within psychiatry, we see now the rise of the term narcissistic personality disorder, NPD. And we see the effect that has on individuals, that individuals that are narcissists are basically victimizing other people that they come in contact with, but they themselves are the victims of this particular ailment that's plaguing them. And what I've personally seen in playing around with this is that it's fully correctable, just like these other conditions are that we've seen over the years. But I digress, just briefly there, but just to highlight.
But you're okay, because the listener to this will have a full rounded understanding by the time that we finish this wonderful discussion, this engagement that we're involved in right here. Yes, it's not in isolation. We are all affected. Churches are affected. Organizations are affected. The very root of the family unit is affected so negatively by these things. When your mother suicided, it was like a neutron bomb going off in our home. It destroyed everybody. Everybody was in a state of trauma. And that's the far outreach. That's the outside edge of it. Because there are many, many suicides that take place in North America and throughout the world that are the result of this situation within the one soul that's struggling with it.
Right.
No question. Yeah, and our family was no different than any other family. I remember listening at night and hearing the children crying in their beds. Yeah, I remember that trauma. I remember what it did to me. And I even questioned whether I wanted to carry on because it was so oppressive. Here I am, a young father, well, I guess 40 years old, 41 years old is still thought about as being young when most people live, into the late 70s, 80s now. Half finished my life. But I remember what it did to me and the loss of hope I had, because I saw the same thing occurring in some of the children that came from your mother, the offspring.
Now, I guess we should probably continue on with the discovery aspect here, but, to digress a brief moment here to kind of paint the picture. So at the time that mom takes her life, you're a traveling businessman. We had just moved about 6 months previous to that, 7 months previous.
That's right.
And you're getting reestablished. And now you're making some serious shifts in your life right now, given the circumstances. I remember, as a young boy now, I'm not quite 11 years old, but I remember you completely shifting gears, and now you are taking on a really humble job. You're an engineer, so you're taking care of the hospital, the boiler room, if I remember correctly.
Correct. I was the chief engineer.
Right.
For that hospital.
But you also took on other roles in just so that you could be around the family during that time, I remember.
Yes.
So that you were basically not a janitor, but I remember you handling garbages and stuff like that at the hospital as well, because obviously the boiler room didn't need full-time supervision.
They needed my license that I had.
Yeah.
My engineering license. But you know what? Everything became very humble. And I was so afraid for the children. And I've lost so much hope. And I'm hauling dirty diapers out of the old folks' homes. That was my job.
I remember it.
I'm not ashamed of doing that. Whatever we do to righteously put food on the table to assist our children is a good cause. But boy, howdy, it lowered us. It put the boom to us, and we lived in abject poverty.
Right, but it allowed you to be close to the children, close to all of us.
Had to
during that time.
I couldn't travel.
Right.
I couldn't travel. I did a lot of business and was successful in business before that, but that wasn't part of my life anymore because I had to remain close to the children.
And at that point in time, there's 7 of us living under your roof at that time.
That's right.
And now what's it looking like within the children? Because we talked about these being hereditary or genetic conditions. Yeah. So now what are you observing in the wake of mom's passing. Actually, even before mom's passing, this needs to be clear because this isn't something that's a direct result of mom's passing. Mom's passing didn't help, though. Oftentimes, the trauma can even,
intensify these things.
Right.
Oh yeah.
But these things were already there, and medication was already present in at least one of my siblings.
No, there was two.
Okay.
There was Joseph, young man, 15 years old, diagnosed bipolar affective disorder 1, a replica of his mother, a replica of his grandfather who took his life.
Mm-hmm.
And there was Autumn. Autumn at that time was a mom. She's on 5 different medications. What's her diagnosis? Bipolar affective disorder 1 with rapid cycling, with schizoaffective featuring.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. And yes, we've talked about the genetic thing, but there's an underlying cause for it. There's an underlying cause for the whole thing. And we're going to get into that as we go in this nice voice calm that we're doing here. But yeah, scared the hay out of me. As a father, I'm looking at this. Our son Joseph was out of control. Was it his fault? No. But he was extremely violent. At the age of 15, he ended up with a federal weapons charge. He took a shot at a guy, at a young man.
And he's stockpiling weapons at that time.
Yes.
He's in persistent trouble with at school.
Sure.
So this isn't a one-off situation. This was just par for the course for him.
Well, I remember talking to the principal. We can't keep him in the school here because there's always a fisticuff. Mm-hmm. There's always a fight in the classroom. Mm-hmm. There's always a major outburst in the classroom. And Mr. Stephan, we can't keep him here if this continues. We're trying to help your son as much as we can. He has to help himself. But they weren't understanding what was promoting all this bad, errant behavior, you see. Right. And so, yeah, I mean, I saw the same thing, and I used to fear. They're going the same route as their mother. And, yeah.
At some point in time, there would eventually be different conversations that would begin to emerge with that same principle. Let's talk about what led up to all of a sudden the gears shifting and the principal now phoning you over other situations, but with a positive note versus a negative note. At this point in time, we're sitting at about 1995. Let's go to early 1995. Now, my recollection is from the history that you portrayed to me, because at this time I'm only 12 years old.
Yes.
Right. So, and mental illness still isn't even really being openly discussed in the home.
Not at all. You're right.
Like I wouldn't really come to even understand the term mental illness from my recollection till probably 13, 14, 15 years old is when it became very transparent in the home.
Let me explain to you why. It's because I didn't understand it. I'm a trained engineer. I look at logistics. I look at putting together plans for piping systems and heating systems and thermal operation, power generation. That's my job. And so I'm a very logistic person. I can calculate and analyze. But I did not understand what these so-called mental illnesses are. In fact, sadly, I didn't have enough understanding for your mother because I wasn't raised that way. I was raised in a home where if you're depressed, just get up and get going. You see what I'm saying? That's the old European thinking that came.
Mind over matter, think
just
positive thoughts.
Positive. You're going to be okay. No, you're not.
No.
When your mental chemistry is out the window, you're in trouble. And so many people experience this thing and their relationships just literally explode because we don't comprehend what we're going through. I married Barbara, your stepmom. Mm-hmm. Wonderful lady. Whoa. Let me tell you, though, I married her 8 months after your mom died. I believe it was a godsend.
Now, I just want to say, many people would probably say, "Wait a minute, hold on. That's way too early." Like a lot of people will. So I want to let's just throw that out. Now I want to look at it from my perspective. I remember I'm now 11 years old, and you announce it to me. Boom, I'm having a blowout in the room, and you're saying, because she's downstairs, and you're telling me that you're going to marry Barb, right?
Here's your new stepmom, David.
Right, and obviously
live with it.
right. In the next month or whatever, you're going to marry her, and I'm looking at it saying, "Whoa!" Right now, I look back at it from a much different perspective today, a significantly different perspective. That first of all, understanding your needs as a father, trying to hold it together. There's 7 kids in the home. And yes, I look at it and, I had my questions, especially back then. Like, a godsend? Really? Come on, Dad. Right? But I'd lacked the understanding, obviously. I'm 11 years old.
Well, you're a child.
Right. But I look at it now and I say, I think absolutely she was a godsend, because she came into a war zone, and I don't know any other woman that would have been able to stay, right? Like, Barb's 100 feet away from us right now. Right? Like, on the homestead here. She's still with you today. I don't know of any other woman that would have been able to stick around for the fireworks and the never-ending fireworks that were prevalent within, I'm speaking metaphorically, obviously, but prevalent within our home that was devastated and persistently plagued with mental illness.
Oh, you got her. But as a child, you can't see that. Children have limited vision because they don't have the life experience. I lacked a lot of the vision at that time in my life because I didn't have life's experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And we're in school. That's what this is all about. We're learning. We're learning about relationships and how to coexist as people in families, communities, whatever it is. But I remember it was warfare. I mean, blended marriages at the very best can be pretty bad.
Mm-hmm.
And ours was not good. Do I blame anybody? No. What's the causation behind that? What created that in the first place? Well, your mother's illness. Right. Because all those dominoes falling in place that have to go that way are caused because of the mental conditions of people. You see? I'm not saying everybody has a mental condition. Don't take me wrong when I say this. But there's a good percentage of our population.
Well, let's be straight here. How many people are fully mentally well? And are we grading it off of a curve based on societal standards? Because the fact of the matter is, yes, not everybody has a diagnosable mental health condition.
That's right.
But I'm here to say, I don't know anybody, even with the significant discovery that was made, I don't know anybody who has a fully solid mental constitution where they're untouchable, everything is perfect, it's working exactly the way it should. No, I don't know a single person, but I do know that through the discovery that these mental health conditions that are diagnosable are completely eradicated when everything comes into a state of homeostasis or balance within the body.
Yes.
Right? So a solution was discovered. But let's get to that. Early 1995, the home is a disaster. The children we're all getting worse. I'm now going into puberty. Mm-hmm. And I myself am now basically on the verge of a diagnosable mental health condition, but nobody's looking at me because there's Joe who's homicidal, suicidal, and he's making me look like an angel in comparison to him, but I'm not doing well, right?
I remember you expressed a lot of OCD type thinking. You did.
Yes, I did.
And that's not a criticism.
No, it's an observation.
It was an inheritance. And even though we're questioning the genetics right now, we started out talking that way. It's an inheritance that comes into families. Look, it's well understood in the science that a bipolar mom, and I shouldn't give that classification. We don't call a person a cancer because they have cancer. But a mom that's expressing bipolar symptomatology will give birth to ADHD children. And at puberty, those ADHD children, it's well established in science, will begin to express bipolar symptomatology.
Especially if they're on medications for the ADHD.
And if you have a sick father whose chemistry is not well established, he's on the edge.
Yep.
You've got not double indemnity, but you've got double the factoring there.
Yep.
And this is what all those children were subject to.
Yeah, there was it was like a buffet of mental health conditions in our home, where it didn't seem like any one of us was exactly the same. OCD, yeah, you painted it a little bit light there. You didn't mention the rage.
Well, yes, that's part of it too.
The extreme rage
Yeah.
that qualified me for the nickname Beast, right?
Well,
And that nickname still amongst some of my nieces and nephews still stands today.
You're Uncle Beast, they call you.
Yep.
Well, Joe created that one, but no, there was some problems. We didn't talk about the 11-year-old girl who would see your sister. I'm not going to mention names. No need to. Who would express schizophrenic type symptoms. She would see people who weren't there, and major mood oscillation.
Yep.
1 minute laughing, the next minute crying.
Right.
These are all symptoms of bad chemistry.
Right.
Bad chemistry. Now, we're going to get into that in a little while so that the viewing, listening audience can understand why they're seeing this in their loved ones that normally we write off.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we can't hang out with Aunt Phyllis because Aunt Phyllis is a mental wreck.
Right.
Well, what's causing Aunt Phyllis, who when she was a little child was a very sharing, beautiful little girl that had great love for her family. And when she grew up, all that changed because of chemistry.
Yep.
Well, I remember when your stepmom, Barbara.
No, hold on.
Okay, go ahead.
Get ready to go in that. I just want to
pull it back.
For the sake, just for the sake of the listeners. When you say chemistry, I want to introduce two words.
Please do.
Hormones and neurotransmitters. So when you say chemistry, I want the listeners to recognize that what you're referring to is hormones and neurotransmitters. But go ahead. You're about to start talking about Barb.
And before we get there, I'm going to add something to that. We don't get to control as a human species the level consciously of different neuropeptides, enzymatic factoring. You talk about neurotransmitters and hormones. We hear it all the time. Oh, she has a hormone problem. She's out of control. Did she, whoever that is, do this to themselves?
Yeah, did they turn down the levels of the hormones? Not conscientiously, but through the discovery, it identifies that there's things that fully put it within our control, and not just based on the actions that we perform. Because to digress for a moment here, laughter yoga. You want to increase the levels of serotonin?
Yeah.
There's this practice called laughter yoga, and it has nothing to do with yoga, but it has to do a lot with laughter.
Yes, it does.
And even if you don't think it's funny, your body doesn't know the difference. And by you faking the laughter, eventually the laughter becomes real, and the serotonin will spike.
Yes.
Right? So there's things that we can do, but are we going to be engaged in laughter yoga because we have a serotonin deficiency, because we're not creating enough serotonin, which also, that's just one neurotransmitter amongst many that will help to regulate our mood, right? Are we going to constantly be engaging in that? We shouldn't have to. There's other factors as well that we're going to get into, and I don't want to spoil it. So
No, this is good, because we want the listening audience, yes, to understand, I'm going to put it this way, the Truehope story, the history. This is an incredible experience.
And it's an unfortunate tragedy that too many people can relate to. But it's a triumph. It's a tragedy that led to triumph that has served to be such an incredible blessing that when I look at it, I say, Mom's death was not for nothing. And I you've expressed the same sentiment, but I'm now at a place in my life that I can say the same thing.
It was sadly a blessing to all of us and to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people globally in those 104 countries where people are helping themselves now.
Over the last 30 years. Yeah.
Exactly. Taking control over their mental well-being. I like that terminology better than the dungeon term mental illness.
Right. Because this isn't just about mental illness. Yes, mental illness is getting corrected where it's no longer a theme in people's lives.
That's right.
But ultimately, this is about just empowering people to have a higher level of mental well-being.
Yes.
And it's applicable to everybody. This isn't, right? The discovery is phenomenal.
Well, it is. It doesn't just talk about a feeling of well-being. That's good. Sensory acuity, intelligence. There's no question.
Cognition? Yeah, exactly.
The baby research that took place where they found, and we haven't even introduced yet, what came out of all of this sadness and trauma.
So why not before talking about how, pregnancies and babies, healthy, super babies is what the nickname of the study was going to be and all that. Anyways, before we get into that, because now I think we're intriguing the audience, but let's get back to 1995.
Okay.
So
let's go there.
we're now a year out from Mom's taking her life.
Okay.
There's 7 of us in the home. Actually, at this point in time, there's 6 children and yourself and now Barb.
Yes.
Right? So there's now 6.
And it's a war zone.
It's an absolute war zone.
Yeah.
But it's what I grew up in. I didn't know any different. I just thought these other families around me, my friends' homes, they're boring. They're not right. They're not lighting stuff on fire like we are. They're not at each other's throat. They're not right. Like, so that was my normal growing up. Was chaos.
Yes.
Was a war zone, and it was all the product of mental illness.
Well, and you asked the question at the front. What is normality?
Yeah, that was our normal.
That was our normal.
But it's very unhealthy.
Yes. Well, I remember coming home to the neighbor knocking on the door. I had to work. I'm trying to put bread on the table. Mr. Stephan, I live. Oh, yeah, I recognize you. Good to see you. Well, I'm not sure if it's good to see you. What's wrong? Well, your sons had this huge slingshot, and they would hold it out with 2 guys, and they would fire these rocks across the road and cave in my overhead door. Do you want to look out over there? Do you see all those dents? They wrecked the door. But you know what, Mr. Stephan? I understand what you're going through and your loss. And so I'm just going to walk away. But please, don't allow them to do that. They're going to start firing and catapulting stones through my windows next. Sir, you got my blessings. I'm sorry. I don't expect you to pay anything, but just keep it down, will you?
Yeah, I think there was a level of compassion in the neighborhood.
Well, there was. They understood the loss.
And we were literally, we would have been labeled as the crazy family. It was, with our audience, those who are watching, if they've grown up in the most dire of circumstances in relation to mental illness, this is a story that just is par for the course for them. Like, it's so relatable because it was about as bad as it gets. Yeah. Weapons charges, stockpiling weapons, homicidal thoughts, suicidal. Like, Joe was the next schoolyard shooting waiting to happen.
He admits that. He says, I was what a schoolyard shooting was made of.
And then Autumn was on the Haldol, Rivotril, Ativan, Cogentin, Risperidol, and she was in and out of the psych ward. When she wasn't in the psych ward...
That was your second home.
Right. She was on 24-hour supervision because she was obsessing about killing James, her 3-year-old son. Yes. And so fortunately, her, great husband, faithful husband, just like you as a faithful father and a faithful husband, he's sticking around for the ride, and it's less than desirable. And where many people would have, written the divorce, it would have been done and over with. But he's sticking through with Autumn, and they're 5 hours north of us. So now this is 1995.
Okay.
And you've got Autumn living 5 hours north of us in Edmonton, and she's a disaster.
She's a disaster, but I'm going to preempt this a little bit. If I can go back just a little earlier. Barbara, when she moved in with us, she saw it because she came from a normal home, if you want to put it like that, whatever normality is. But she came from a home that was fairly stable. Was it perfect? No, but it was fairly stable. And this was an unstable environment, a family environment that she moved into. And she said, I can't do this. We're not going to survive. Our marriage is going to come flying apart. Can't help it, Tony, unless we do something. We have to get some help for Joseph because he's out of control. He's on lithium. He's on 1,200 milligrams of lithium a day. That's a knock him down dose. That would knock down a horse.
Yeah, 900 milligrams is typically the large dose.
Yeah, and he's over that. And he's absolutely out of control, and he's violent, and she's afraid. We used to lay in our bed at night in the lower part of the house, and if we heard his bed springs creak, she was up like a shot, because she always had fear that he was going to really injure the children or come after her. I mean, this is the type of thing that we lived in.
Yep.
It's a war zone. And so she started pushing it, and she contacted the University of Calgary. They run a psychiatric extension out of the Foothills Hospital. Do you have a good psychiatrist that we could visit with? And it took about 3 months to get in there, and on that one day we drove up, Joe and Barbara and I, and 3 hours up, and we got in there, and we're in the waiting room, and finally, come on in, Mr. Stephan, right? I said, yes. Mrs. Stephan, yes. And this must be Joseph, yes. And we got in there, and I was really apprehensive. I'm starting to ask questions now. What the heck happened? What caused this explosion in our family?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm asking her, and I'm saying, with all of the billions of dollars in the pharmaceutical industry, there must be a better answer, because these medications aren't working on him, or medication. In this case, it was lithium. And my daughter Autumn, I explained, is on 5 medications. You've already mentioned them: Haldol, Rivotril, Epival, Cogentin, and it's not helping. And her second home is the psychiatric ward.
Mm-hmm.
There must be a better answer than this. And she said, no, there isn't. And we're going to have to increase his medications and try different cocktails to see if we can sedate him. Well, sedation isn't the answer. I want him whole. And I kept on pushing that with her. And she finally said, Mrs. Stephan, I want you and Joseph to go out in the waiting room and close the door, please. And when that door closed, it was like a bomb going off in my face, a shotgun, whatever. Mr. Stephan, you don't get it. What you see is what you've got, and you are not going to change this paradigm, and you better understand that. And I want you to know something clear, Mr. Stephan. You understand. He's got a predisposition to suicide, just like his mother and his grandfather, and you need to be prepared for that.
And she even went to her bookshelf, pulled off at that time the DSM-4 to qualify what she was saying to you, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. She was well equipped, and she's a good soul, and I wasn't angry at what she said. I couldn't deal with it. And I got up in my numbed out, hopeless state, and I said to her, thank you very much. And I walked out the door and closed it, and we left. That ride home 3 hours was riding into eternity, because I had nothing. I was mortally drained, spiritually drained. And that was the impetus. That's the boot in the backside that said, you're going to do something with this, or you're going to suffer losses, and those children are going to suffer, and they're going to suffer terrible losses, because it's not going to stop here. It's not going to stop at Debbie's death. It's not going to stop at the fact that her father took his life. And aunts and uncles and cousins in that family paradigm riddled with it. I had zero hope.
So, by her being brutally honest with you.
Yes, and she was brutal.
And her stating Now, it would prove to not exactly be the truth, but within the confines of the pharmaceutical realm, it would be the truth that you're not going to change this paradigm. This is not going to go away.
Yeah.
That you walked away from that completely devoid of any hope within the pharmaceutical industry, within psychiatry as a whole.
Yeah.
That now you were put into a position where either you accept that fate or you begin to look elsewhere.
Well, absolutely. You come to the recognition, like I came to that honest recognition that your mother, yes, she struggled, but when she got on Prozac, it was like a gas bomb.
You know, we didn't even talk about that. How
Yeah.
long was she on Prozac
About
before
2.5 weeks.
before she took her life?
Took her life. She went absolutely hysterical. She couldn't think clearly. She was a raging, emotional mess. No criticism. Please, to the audience out there, they need to understand. We indemnify those people who have suffered this way. It's not their fault. It's not their fault.
Right, they become a product of the system. So, and later on down the road, just to kind of fast forward about 10 years down the road, we'd learned some stuff about Prozac that was withheld, the science that was withheld surrounding what the impact that it actually had in relation to suicidal ideations.
Well, when that science that was withheld absolutely came to the forefront, FDA and Health Canada were forced to put out advisories and black box warnings on the SSRI, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. That's the class of antidepressants. And there's a black box warning talking about homicidal ideation and suicidal ideation. Why our schoolyard shootings are mass drug events. And we won't get into that right now.
Right.
But it's declared right on the box now.
Absolutely. And we see the most common factor in schoolyard shootings isn't necessarily the gun. It's matched by the fact that there's an SSRI medication or an antipsychotic, some kind of psychiatric medication involved, where they're either withdrawing from it or they've recently been put on it, and they go into a state of psychosis oftentimes. And some of them wake up in the psych ward or an institution not even knowing what they just did.
The dream state.
Right.
It's real.
Yeah, they go into it, right? And so now we learn that SSRIs as a whole, across the board, the simple statistic is that you're twice as likely to commit suicide when taking an SSRI medication than you are by taking a sugar placebo pill, right?
Exactly.
And that's what the research shows. And yet they hid that. And so we would then learn and come to a better understanding as to what led up to Mom's taking her own life.
Yes.
And that the Prozac was a major factor in that, because Prozac is actually the worst out of them, is my understanding, that in some certain circumstances, it's actually 8 to 12 times enhanced suicidal ideation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. These are truisms that have been established, and we didn't have that information at first, and it wasn't even available.
Right.
And that's the crime of the whole thing. Things were hid. Well, we went on.
So this is early 1995. You've been completely shattered of any hope that you had of Joe getting better by taking a better medication or a different combination of medications. That hope has been shattered, and you're now destitute.
Well, and when you become destitute and your paradigm is shattered, that's what it was, you begin to look. And what's the last court of resort for a lot of people? And it was like me. You start to turn towards God. And you ask the question, what? You mean to tell me if you're the God of all these human beings and all this beautiful life that we see around us, the wildlife, the forest, if you're the God of that, did you send people here to suffer like this, where they have no control? Look, today, if you decided that you wanted to go and get a university degree in accounting or physics or whatever you wanted to do, you have the self-will to do that.
Absolutely.
People with chemical conditions don't have any control over their lives.
Right.
Their agency is removed because of the chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
and I began to understand and received impressions. No, that's not what God did. There's an error. There's an error in our society that's creating these things. Absolutely. Absolutely. And going with that premise, it set me on a path of discovery, but a path of searching and praying and fasting and looking under every rock, as it were, for that answer. Because the feeling I had, no, this isn't meant to be, then there must be an answer out there for it. And it drove me night and day and night and day.
And as a result of that, you're talking to people in the small community that we lived in.
Yes.
And you're hearing stories about mental illness.
Yep.
You're not hearing a story of anybody recovering from mental illness, though.
Never. There wasn't any stories of recovery that I could come upon. And I looked at, I guess if you want to say thousands of caseloads, there wasn't any. I saw the lady that had been in and out of the hospital since she was a teenager with no correction. Her husband abandoned her. He couldn't live with her anymore. The children are all gone. She's alienated. She's like an island, a lonely island. That's the sad story that I saw as I prayed and searched and looked with wonder for an answer.
And during that time, there's certain people that are making recommendations to you that as you're talking in the community, and you're trying different modalities for Joseph.
Oh, we did everything, David. We did magnetic therapy. We did herbal therapies. We did this. There must be an answer
the
there.
The Tahitian noni juice, which when that didn't work, I was left to drink it because I heard it was good, and I had a propensity to take good stuff because I wanted to be super strong, right? I'm still.
I'm glad you drank it all, David.
The copious. I don't know where. I have the question because I mentioned this in my presentations about the copious amounts of flax oil that found their way into our freezer. Where did you get this copious amount? There was bottles and bottles and bottles of this stuff as if you'd been gifted it.
Yep.
Where did that come from? Do you remember?
We bought them.
Okay, so there was all sorts of things that you were trying for Joe, and all of these things are recognized to be good.
Well, they are, and they're good. They're good agents. They're health agents.
But did they help Joe?
No.
Was he able to come off the lithium?
No, nothing worked.
Okay, now this is mid-1995, just for context here. And now you're now seeing something here because you're trying stuff, and it's to no avail.
Well, there was two events.
All right.
That opened the door. The first event was I listened to a tape. A good friend named Ron gave me this tape. It was called...
Tape set?
Yeah, Dead Doctors Don't Lie.
I remember listening to them while I was on business with you and having to be subjected to listening to those. And as on the tape set in the old Cavalier, and we're driving down the road, and I'll be honest with you, as a 12-year-old, that's not the most ideal thing to listen to, but I remember it had an emotional impact on me enough that I still recall that today. But yes, go ahead.
Well, that Dr. Wallach had a sense of humor, and it kind of attracted me because I had lots of people try this, do this, listen to this. Here's a book. Here's a manual, you see?
Yep.
And I listened to this Dead Doctors Don't Lie probably about 10 times, 15 times. I kind of felt attracted to it. And I remember in the middle of the night having an experience. It was a spiritual experience. And I could hear this thing playing in my mind. Maybe it was because I listened to it 15 times and it's 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm sleeping. But it came to a part and there was a statement made that absolutely blew me awake. And Barb said, "What's going on?" I said, "That's it. That's it. The answer isn't in magnetics. The answer isn't in this or that or 50 other modalities. The answer is found in nutrition." And I absolutely knew it. I took a job And I was responsible for 26 churches in southern Alberta. And they have what they call the PFR. He's responsible in that certain area for the buildings, and he would correlate with me on painting, replacement of carpet, or whatever, making sure the buildings are looking
So in
good.
essence, you're a property manager overseeing these 26 buildings.
Yeah, exactly. Simply stated, yeah.
Yeah, and you're facilitating stuff, but so you're correlating with a PFR.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this guy had spent a lot of time in the animal industry, not human, but the animal industry. And he said, I got to tell you about this. I remember being on a project with the Hutterites. They're a large religious organization in southern Alberta and throughout Western Canada. And they had a lot of piggeries, the hog barns.
Well, now, before you got to that, though, before you get into that conversation, what led up to you having that conversation with them? Because my recollection is you're conducting business as normal. You're walking down a hallway of one of these large churches.
Yep.
And you're talking about, if my recollection is correct, replacing carpets.
Yes,
So,
exactly.
So my question is, how do you even get into this ancillary conversation that has nothing to do with business?
Good point. Because he became a friend, and I had kind of confided in him about what Joseph was going through, and and all the terror that we had as a family, and my second wife, and all the problems that were inherent within his mental aberrations that he suffered with. And he looked at me. We stopped in the hall, and he said, you know what, Tony? I don't know a whole lot about mental illness. My family's never had one. Don't know anything about it. But I can tell you that I used to work in the hog barns, and we used to see a thing called ear and tail biting syndrome. And I had told him about how Joe would go into these terrible, raging, explosive behavioral issues,
Hyperbole, raging violence. Yeah.
And he said, I saw that in the hog barns. I said, you did? Yeah. He said, that's why it's called ear and tail biting syndrome, because they would gore each other. They would actually, you had to separate them because they would actually kill one another, rip off an ear, tear off a tail, tear out the flank.
Yep.
And he said, but we resolved it. We put extra calcium and magnesium and phosphorus into their feed, and they became nice hogs. They settled down. When he told me that, it was an illumination, an epiphany. What? I felt it. I absolutely knew that we were on to this thing. And he eventually partnered up with me, and we carried on, and in due course came an association of products.
Well, let's not get there yet.
Okay, we won't go there.
You mentioned, we will go there. Let's go there, but let's just there. So he tells you this information. Now, I think it's important for the audience to know that in the months preceding this, you've already tried magnetic therapy. You've tried Tahitian noni juice. You've tried copious amounts of flax oil, which is great, right? Omega-3 fatty acids are well known for mental health.
I tried vitamins and minerals too.
Well, yeah, and you tried what Joe calls rust water.
Yes.
Any clarification on what that was?
It was a mineral water.
Okay, so this is 30 years ago. So some kind of mineral water. So you've already tried these things, and it hasn't created the effect that you're looking for. It hasn't created even a notable effect that would allow for you to reduce his medications. Now, you mentioned a word there that when David Hardy had mentioned, I'm not sure if we mentioned his name yet, but the PFR.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
When he had mentioned about his experience in the animal feed industry and formulating feed for hogs across Western Canada, Western United States and all that, and the ear and tail biting syndrome, that you mentioned the word epiphany, which, by the way, is the name of a film that just was released this past year on the Truehope story. It's actually the Truehope battle, Epiphany, the Truehope battle. Because within your interviews, from two different times, going back to 2010, and then even your most recent interview for that film as well, that both those sets of interviews were drawn from in that film, you had mentioned in both of those that you had had an epiphany, that there was this opening experience. How important was it that you had that confirmative or confirmation experience surrounding what David Hardy had just mentioned to you?
The story was, I'll say, vital, because it triggered the epiphany. I had been on my face pleading with God for help. You got to help my children, Lord. You have to help me because they're going to disappear, just like their mom did, just like their grandpa did, if you don't come, if you don't help me. And that was my prayer for months and months and months.
And that was accompanied by fasting, pondering it.
Sure.
My recollection is that you even lost notable weight during that particular time
big
because
time
of the amount
weight.
of fasting that you were involved in.
Big time weight.
You were willing to do what it took. That if there was an answer, that you're willing to do whatever it took to discover that answer is my recollection of that.
Yes,
based
absolutely.
on the fact that you were involved in that type of fasting to the point that it was basically a weight loss program now, as you were starving yourself to that degree, in a sense, seeking and petitioning, for an answer from God.
To find that answer. And it was like a light switch turned on. It was earmarked. It was boom. It's there. You've got your answer. Your answer. The answer wasn't calcium, magnesium, and phosphorus. The answer was that you could make an application together, a number of components together that would bring that calm.
Of vitamins and minerals.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay, so how important was it that you... Okay, well, actually, before we get into that, you acted on that pretty immediately, didn't you? That confirmation that you received?
Totally, like the next day.
Did it work?
Yeah.
Well, so this November of 1995...
I'll say it was a little coarse, a little rough. But I'm going to say this, and some people may be offended by this. I'm sorry if you're offended by this, but I want you to know that your greatest friend is your God that created you. And there's no question we were inspired to put into a formula the things that are still in that formula 30 years later. It was a work of inspiration. My friend, David didn't have experience in human nutrition at all. I was an engineer.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at what happened, because over a period of months, we put this thing together. We had to find sources. We did a lot of reading. We had feelings. Put this in. No, don't do that. Don't do that.
Okay.
And that combination came together.
Now, it's about 1998, right?
Yes.
Let's go back to 1995. November 1995, you go down to a health food store with David Hardy, and you guys pick out a bunch of different products.
Yes.
Did it work for Joe? Did he come off his medications in November of 1995?
Yes, he did.
In November of 1995?
No, he didn't. It was 2 years. It was 1996. It was about 2 years, my recollection, that it took to finally put a protocol together.
Right. Now, in November of
It used to be called the Synergy Quad Program.
Yeah. And quad signifying 4 because there was 4 distinct products that you would eventually come across.
And it worked. It was very effective.
So now we have a gap here, though.
Yes, we do.
Because January 18th of 1996 is when you discovered the quad program.
Yes.
4 products. So now we have a void here of November to
I'm
January.
glad that you keep the history and date and time. I'm
Okay.
getting older.
So what I'm trying to get at here is there's a void of 2 full months where before Joe is even able to come off his medications, before the quad program is in place, that you're trying different vitamins and minerals.
Yes.
Right? So how important was it that you received that spiritual confirmation that that nutrition was the answer, especially during the 2 months time where you're trying different vitamin and mineral products and they're not working?
It was critical because you could look back at that, and I always say connect the dots. If you have a spiritual experience in your life, it isn't just a separate entity, a little localized thing. You can connect the dots.
Right.
Well, if A plus B equals C, what can you do? Where can you go with it? There's a connecting. And it drove me because I knew that I had received a spiritual answer. And I'm nothing. I don't claim to be a prophet or anything like that. I'm just saying, as a guy that was suffering with a broken heart and a broken life and a broken family, that the tender mercy of God led me to know that that was the absolute answer. It didn't come with a long list.
Right.
You know, folic acid, vitamin C and B1 and 6. It didn't come like that.
Right.
It was a feeling, an absolute feeling where truth was revealed. This is the
a
answer.
catalyst that will
Now go
lead
and
you.
do it.
Right.
Now go and do it.
So now you're trying to figure this out. So if you hadn't received that spiritual confirmation, do you think that during the latter part of November and into December of 1995 that maybe you would have thrown in the towel and said, well,
Yep.
we tried the vitamins and minerals and they didn't work?
Yep, you're right.
Do you think that would have been the case?
There wouldn't have been anything that would have carried me through.
So you persisted.
Yeah.
And January, and I get this from you, January 18th, 1996, you have a very specific date on that because it also correlates with a particular prescription that Joe was on at that time. And there's that the whole part of the story. So what happens in January when the quad program comes into play? And we also have, corresponding with that, his prescription for lithium. What happens during that particular time?
Well, we carried on with the quad program for quite a while.
But okay, let's talk about Joe,
Well,
though.
okay.
Specifically, what happens in January? And what does it have to do with his lithium?
Go ahead.
Well, okay, so at what point in time January 18th of 1996, okay, so 2 months later, you finally come across these 4 products that were coming out of the States, right?
Yes, they were.
What happened? How did that look initially? What you tried them out, what happened?
Well, they worked.
And how fast? What did that look like?
Well, I remember putting Joe on, and in a matter of, now I get where you're going. Thank you for reminding me of this, but we put him on that program, and within 14 days, we saw an absolute miracle. In fact, his principal phoned me and said, "What are you doing?" He's not yelling at the teachers. He's not having a fisticuff in the back of the room. He's actually doing his homework. What happened?
Right. So there's a complete changeover that begins
Totally.
happening rapidly, right?
Very rapidly.
Okay. And I guess for the audience here, so when I'm drawing this out of you,
Yeah, no, that's a good thing.
it's necessary for the audience to know that this is a completely organic conversation.
Mm-hmm.
We have not rehearsed anything. We have not even discussed what we're going to be discussing tonight.
That's right.
We're sitting down, and this is off the cuff. I hate doing anything off script. And you mentioned something earlier about script sucks or something like that.
Well, it does, because it's not you, and this is very organic, and it flows because we're talking about a 30-year history period. That's a long time.
And there's significant details here. So you don't know necessarily where I'm going. So it's important for the audience to know that when I'm trying to draw it out of you, you may not know where I'm going. So
That's right.
This is perfect. So, okay, there's a rapid transformation that begins to happen in Joe because he gets on these 4 different products. Now, according to, and we should probably mention this, there's a Discovery Health documentary. Discovery Health Channel does a documentary in September 2002.
Okay.
Right. So now we're kind of fast forwarding. But during that documentary, Joe makes mention that in 5 days, there's like a fog lifted and I could now see what was right and wrong. So this is January 18th. So now by the time that we're into January 20s, right?
Yep.
Of 1996, right? Maybe it's the 23rd, 24th, 25th. Joe's saying a fog lifted and he can now see what was right and wrong. So here he's blinded to the effects that his behavior has been having on those around him.
Yes, exactly.
Which now when we become self-aware, our behavior also changes to align with our values, right? At that point in time. So now there's a shift already in his behavior. So now with the lithium, there's a bit of a story surrounding the lithium. And I don't know how deep you want to go into that, but you still have a bottle of lithium.
Still have
today.
it.
A full bottle of lithium to this day. What happened there?
He didn't need it anymore.
So
he walked away from it. I didn't have to administer the lithium to him anymore. He didn't need any sedation therapy whatsoever.
Now, my recollection is there's a story between you and Barb that you guys were having some heated conversations surrounding whether or not to fill the prescription again because he had just run out as you ended up with these 4 different products.
Exactly. And I said to her, she said, I have to go down to the pharmacy and get the lithium prescription refilled. And I said, don't do it. Don't do it, because we want to know if this is working or not. You can't put 2 points into a study, and this wasn't a study by any stretch, it was an experiment, and know what has had the effect. You have to keep it to 1. And the one that I wanted to deal with does this. It wasn't called that then, but it became known as the Synergy Quad program. Does it have an effect? Because I think we were led to get these 4 components in there, right?
Yep.
And I won't tell you that we had a fight over it, but, more politically correct, we had a family discussion. And she won. And she went down to the drugstore and she refilled it. But on the way home, she had some thinking that came upon her. And she brought it to me and she said, Tony, I'm sorry. I don't want to force anything here. If you want to try this, you try it. But you know what he's like when he's not on his lithium. It's not pretty.
And that needs, the audience needs to understand that without the lithium, it was a complete disaster.
Oh.
With the lithium, it was still a disaster, but just less of a disaster.
It was a not minimal, but minimized destructive force. That's what it was.
But but Joe didn't like the way the lithium made him feel, so he would avoid taking it. So there was compliance issues, and there was a battle to ensure that he got the lithium because we all saw the impact that it had on him.
Absolutely.
So either way, just so the audience knows that the removal of the lithium, we would anticipate that things would get even worse.
Yeah.
And the lithium was removed. No longer did he take it. You still have to this day
that bottle.
30 years later now.
And it's
this
full.
month.
It's
30
full.
years later this month, you have a full bottle of lithium that Joe was supposed to take and never did take.
Exactly.
What happened?
It worked. He planed right out. He wasn't sedated. It wasn't like administering a drug to get you to slow down at all. In fact, he became more intense, but in a proper way. He had an excitement, a vigor for life all of a sudden. I want to do this. It's like he missed part of his life and it came back to him. I want to do this, Dad. I want to go here. I want to learn about this. You see?
Mm.
And there wasn't the violence and the explosions. He became the young boy that I remember when he was very small, and he was a very caring and sharing individual. He was like a gentle bear. He was always a big guy. He was like a gentle bear, and he became that way again. You see?
And then you started getting phone calls from the principal.
Yeah, absolutely. Shock. What happened? What are you doing? And then pretty soon the principal's out in the community talking. And then the phone began to ring. Mr. Stephan, this is Bob Wilson. I'll just use that name. There might be a Bob Wilson out there. I'm not talking about you. This is Bob Wilson calling. My wife has been depressed for 20 years. She's in bed every day. It's just been terrible. I have to look after, the usual story. It's a dysfunctional family. I heard from the principal at the high school about what you're doing, what you did with your son. Do you think this would work for my wife? I'm not sure, Bob. I'm not sure. But let's give it a try. And it worked. And there was phone calls. My wife has extreme anxiety. Do you think it'll work for her? I'm not sure. It worked. And then came the incredible one. Hi, this is John. My wife has been with schizophrenia for 18 years. She's been in bed. I have to feed her. I have to tidy her or tidy her. She sees bugs crawling on her all the time. There's snakes in the room. I heard down at the Handicap Society, because I take her down there about once a month just to get a little company. But I heard from the Handicap Society down there, the other side of town, that you did something to your son. I want you to come over to my house and fix my wife. Really? Okay. I went over there. I said, John, you're a faithful old man, and you've got a wonderful wife here, and you're looking after her, and you're doing some great work. I don't know. That is a terrible disorder. That's at the top of the block.
Now, this is schizophrenia with agoraphobia. She's not leaving the house.
Yep.
Now, remember, because this is just a block down from us.
Yeah. I never knew him. I never ever saw him in my life, and he was a block over with his wife, Gloria.
Right. Now I recall him because I would see him at church, but I didn't know that he even had a wife. And I don't think that his neighbors knew that he had a wife.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and this is one block over. And so she's not leaving the house excepting for, probably doctor's appointments or something of necessity.
Exactly.
Because of the agoraphobia.
Yeah, and she's, I'm sorry, she's freaking out every day because she's hallucinating and hearing voices constantly. Well, it was interesting. We had got connected with the University of Calgary, Dr. Bonnie J. Kaplan, psychologist, extremely well studied and published. And I was talking to her about this, and she said, why don't we get a baseline? I mean, I'm missing part of the story. You're going to bring that forward. Why don't we get a baseline? And what do you call her? Her name's Gloria. Okay. And I'll get a psychiatrist that will review her files. We'll get permission from him to get the medical records. And we'll get the medical records up here so the psychiatrist can review them. And you go ahead and try your thing. Because I'd had many discussions with Dr. Kaplan about this. But that's another part of the story that doesn't, we'll bring that in.
She was skeptical and said that she had dealt with all the flakes in the 80s regarding nutrition and refused to meet with you initially. There's a whole other cool story to that.
Yeah, you're a snake oil salesman. Well, I'm not selling anything. We're just trying to help people with these conditions, Dr. Kaplan. So, anyhow, and so she did that. And we put her on a good dose of the products, the Synergy Quad program, those 4 components.
4 different products that are not your products, by the way. They're not Truehope products.
No, they were not Truehope products. Yeah. We just had a feeling that these would work because of the prayer that was taking place. Yeah, God will inspire all of us. He'll lead us if we let him.
Yep.
He can make our lives better. That's the moral of that story. But what was really interesting is that within about 14 days, we saw a different person. And pretty soon, the fight started in their home. Yes, and he phoned me and complained about it. She wants the remote control for the television now. I don't get to watch all the games. She's picking out the movies that she wants to watch.
Dynamics in the relationship are shifting as one isn't a care patient anymore.
Well, John, you're blessed, buddy, extremely. You've been blessed because you're getting your wife back. We took her up to the University of Calgary, and she ran a baseline based on the medical records, 18 years of wretchedness, and now 2 weeks, and she assessed her. And she said, well, this is awful early. You bring her back in another 2 weeks. So we would drive her up to the University of Calgary to meet with this well-renowned psychiatrist. She was very well accredited. And her final output was, I can't explain why she would go into remission after 18 years.
Now, this is in the early days before the studies are actually taking place. The first study wouldn't even be, the preliminary results of it wouldn't be published until October of 2000.
Exactly.
So this is years preceding that. This has got to be what, if she's using the quad program, the latest it could have been was probably late 97, early 98, because
I would say you're about right there. Yeah.
So and now people know that she exists because she's also leaving the home. She's going to church. She's in the neighborhood.
She's volunteering at the hospital cafeteria.
Yeah.
And she's wonderful to be with. And I never knew that you lived in this town. I never saw you before, were the comments. And she was performing extremely well. She was a very valuable volunteer resource for that cafeteria.
Yeah. She got her life back.
She did.
From the throes of the most significant mental health conditions, where she's literally living in a different realm.
Yes, exactly.
And has no existence.
Yeah.
She's not even leaving the home. Now she's doing what she wants to do.
Exactly.
What a beautiful thing.
Well,
right?
It was glorious. Her name was Gloria, but the story is glorious because we saw what this thing could counter. And we were told, oh, these are incurable disorders. You're never going to fix this. What you see is what you've got. WYSIWYG.
Right.
That's what she told me. Prepare for another suicide, Mr. Stephan. Didn't happen.
No.
It didn't happen.
So now, okay, so we've kind of fast forwarded here, and the audience is probably left with the idea of, well, what happened to Autumn, right? What happened to, your second oldest daughter, who's on a cocktail of 5 medications, in and out of the psych wards, on 24-hour supervision when she isn't in the psych wards because she's obsessing about killing her 3-year-old son and herself. What happens with her? Because Joe gets better in January of 1996.
Exactly.
Now what happens with Autumn?
Well, in February, her husband looked after her 24/7, and he had to go back on midnight shift. He was working at a paper cardboard cutting plant, right? And operating there. And he said, I have to go back. Can I bring Autumn down to your house? And I'm sorry, Dad, she's really disabled. But I need to drop her off at your place for 7 days and we'll reconnect. I said, you know what I'll do? I'll bring her up in 7 days to Red Deer. And because they were in Edmonton, we're down in southern Alberta, and then we can connect. Okay, love you, Dad. Thank you for looking after her. My parents can't look after her. They're gone. Because his parents were doing all the secondary help there, right?
Right.
Well, she came down on a Saturday. He dropped her off at the house. Sunday morning, we went to church. We're all sitting in the long pew. And all of a sudden, Autumn has an anxiety attack and she's becoming psychotic and she's flapping, which is one of the symptoms. And she's in a major state of anxiety.
Which is interesting. I mean, really, one of the calm hymns would have set her off? Like, there's no explanation as to why she'd go into an anxiety attack during church.
Chemistry?
Exactly. So it's not even like she was set off by the environment?
Yeah, it wasn't the environment. It was a gentle environment. Prayer and singing and hi.
And these are traditional hymns. It's not even like guitar or anything coming out.
It's not the rock band on the stage.
Right.
And that's okay. That sounds pretty good too. But and so she really lost it. And I said, come with me. And I took her out the back door of the church and we started to walk home and she just absolutely lost it. And I said, go lay down in the bedroom there. Just lay down. And it was like something hit me with a sledgehammer. You're not doing this. You're not doing this anymore. Because I had approached her and Dana as your brother Joseph was getting better. Wow, he's doing great. He's off of his lithium. What, you took him off his lithium? My doctor says if I get off my 5 medications, I'm going to die. Well, okay. Well, she really lost it. And I thought, nope. And I won't say that I forced her to do it. because that's not politically correct in this world today. You don't force anybody to do anything. But I constrained her to do it. That sounds a little better, and so I did. And here, you're going to take this. I don't want that. You're going to take this. You're going to take this. You're going to take this. And I started giving her the Synergy Quad program. And here we go. And she woke up 2 days later. And I heard this voice, Dad, Dad. And I yelled down from the upstairs down to that bedroom down there. What, Autumn, you okay? No, I'm not okay. Come and see me. So I went in the bedroom. And she can't hardly keep her eyes open. They're all sagging. And she's talking and drooling, seriously. And I said, what the heck? What's going on? Well, I'm taking my medications. I said, are you really loading up heavy duty? No, I'm taking exactly what I'm supposed to take. And she was like over-medicated. But you didn't increase your meds. No, I didn't increase my meds. I feel drugged out. So I took her off of 4 of the 5 medications that she was on. Oh, that's so irresponsible, Mr. Stephan. How could you do that? Well, I don't know, it just kind of fell in place. I didn't know anything about meds. David Hardy didn't know anything about meds. We didn't know anything. But I took her off of 4 of the 5 and I left one on. It's a good thing I left that other one on. Yeah, the Rivotril. Why? Because it's extremely addictive. But I didn't know that. If I had pulled her off of that, she would have gone into withdrawal because it took her another 60 days to slowly wind down. But on day 4, she woke up and she went and had a shower. Well, that might sound like, what are you talking about, Mr. Stephan? That's no big deal. Yes, it is for her, because her husband had to force her into the shower and clean her because she had no consciousness of her state of being, if you know what I mean. No criticism. She was so ill. Her chemistry was so out the window. And on day 5, I had a conversation with her for about an hour and a half, and it made total sense. I didn't take her back on day 7. I took her back on day 6. I said, you're on midnight shift? Yeah, meet me in Red Deer at Gasoline Alley. I'm bringing her home. Okay. And I told him what I did, and he got really mad. That doctor said if she ends up back in the psych ward, he's going to institutionalize her. You're putting it her terrible risk at. I said, just be patient. Just meet me. Meet me at Gasoline Alley. So I pulled up. And he got out and he was just storming. He was upset. I said, Dana. I opened the door. I said, Autumn, come and sit in the car with Dana. He gets out 45 minutes later and he said, I haven't talked to her like that in a couple of years. We haven't had a conversation. And she looks really pretty. Her hair's done. She got some makeup on. And she's acting normal. Whatever normal is. You brought that up. What's normal? And you know what? She never looked back. She got off of the Rivotril, same as clonazepam, which is very addictive. It's a benzodiazepine type medication, and never looked back. She got well. That's the Truehope story. Joe, your brother, calls himself patient 0. He says that with a laugh. He was patient 0, the very first one. It was nothing but a godsend. This was an answer to prayer. Now I understand how Noah built an ark on dry land. He didn't know what he was doing. He was inspired. There have been men and women inspired throughout the centuries that sought answers from God, and they found them. The wonderful advent of penicillin. Check into the person behind it. See what his thinking was. It was given to him. This was given to us. So I can't take credit. I'm an engineer, and my partner at that time, bless him, he's long since left this earth life. Bless that guy. But you know what? He didn't have it either. It was inspired. Should we add this, Father? Is this okay? And feelings would come, put this in. Don't put this in. It was designed, and I'm saying that. Some people think I'm a religious kook. No, I'm not. I was a desperate father that was clamoring, leaving a claw mark on the wall, looking for answers. And I found it, and it saved my family. And I say to people all the time that come to us, wow, this has helped me so much, I can't believe it. I say, you got the same blessing that my family did, nothing more and nothing less.
Hallelujah.
Well, you're so wonderful. No, I'm not. I just happened to be in the wrong place at the right time. That's what it equates to.
Yep.
And here we are today with hundreds of thousands of people. The massive cohort study that was held between New York State University and the University of Calgary, where they asked us permission to look at our database. And they came back, and what did they say? They had to sign NDAs because there's some pretty powerful people in that database, and all those names had to be removed. You can't identify them. And they signed off as the University of New York State University and the University of Calgary that they would not divulge anything. And what did they find? Number one, that Truehope has the largest neuropsychiatric database in the world. Number two, it's a very strange database of neuropsychiatrics because people come in acutely ill and they leave 60 days later and they're looking wonderful.
Yeah.
Because they look at all of the forms, all of the progression, the data charting that we do with people.
So let's fast track to get to that point, because I'm sure the audience is saying, what database? What does this have to do with a database? So
Go ahead.
now we're working with the Synergy Quad program. There's 4 different products: a colloidal mineral supplement, a calcium, magnesium, phosphorus supplement, a multivitamin, and grapeseed extract. Now, the multivitamin and the calcium, magnesium, phosphorus is chelated, which allows for them to work better. The colloidal minerals, well, obviously, that speaks for itself. It's more bioavailable than just rock form minerals.
Absolutely. It was organic.
And so that's why it's able to even work compared to the previous products that you're using from November to earlier January of, 1995, 1996. Now, you were talking about, formulating and what to put in and whatnot. That comes on the heels at around 1997, 1998, when there was a flawed study that occurred where they were using the quad program and found that people reverted, and they did an analysis of the 4 different products and found that the colloidal mineral supplement varied in its levels of minerals depending on one batch to the next to the next.
Yeah, there was actually a chemistry analysis, a chemical analysis made of the liquid mineral, earth minerals, and they found that they were severely watered down.
So
they didn't have the same potency, and so their data went backwards. People were doing good, climbing on the charts, and they crashed.
Yep. So now we go to a place where you're looking for a replacement, and the study shut down because you can't study a variable.
That's right.
Study was shut down. This was the first study that was occurring, and the first study I'm aware of, although there was one on fibromyalgia, if I remember correctly, as well.
Yeah, there was a little study.
Yeah, because it was also showing promise for that, but that study was a little bit flawed.
University of Calgary, yeah.
Yeah, so it was too short, but those that continued on with it afterwards continued to show improvement in their fibromyalgic symptoms.
They did. Now, let me come into this just for a second. It failed. And at that time, that was a major thing to us and the University of Calgary. I look back now, it was meant to be.
Because it set the stage for
us having a constant protocol that we could control to ensure that label claim was made when you looked at the label and it said 300 milligrams of calcium in a chelated form, that it had 300.
And ultimately that a product was going to be produced that created the results that so many had already come to rely on.
Exactly. It was essential that we went through that because we were dependent upon others.
Yep.
And they didn't have the same thinking that we did.
They didn't have the same mission.
We were doing this for the purpose of the mission. We weren't even, at that time, in the money-making process. We do need money because we have to produce product, buy raws, package, label, send them out, do all this work. But at that time, when we started out, it wasn't about setting up a business. We didn't even want to have a business. We wanted to see if we could affect in a godly way, because it was given to us, people's lives. That's what the mission was about. What would it do for Gloria with her schizophrenia? Well, that sweet lady got her life back. And thousands of people got their lives back in the beginning.
So we now see the emergence of the mission and vision that still carries strong today within True Hope.
Yes.
We see the beginnings of that, where this isn't about business. This is about sharing the blessing that we ourselves within our family are the benefactors of. And we see the beginning of a creation of a product, because prior to that, there was no business element to it. But now, through necessity, you're having to look at this. You and David Hardy are now going to university libraries and studying stuff out. You're praying, you're seeking for divine guidance on producing a product that's going to generate the results that you're looking for.
Exactly. You got it.
This would ultimately lead to significant research, significant opposition, major battles. The topics of documentaries really, it lays the groundwork for why this story would become so intriguing, as to why there's a handful of documentaries now today on the True Hope battle, True Hope discovery. And the story is so incredibly rich. From now, we're in the late 90s, and I know that we've spent just over 90 minutes here on examining the story. So the story gets even more exciting, and there's more twists and turns. It's more of a roller coaster ride as time goes on. So now that we're 90 minutes into this, or just over 90 minutes, we're going to stop here, and we're going to invite our listeners to come back to part 2, where they see what happens when a profound discovery is made that is scientifically validated, showing exactly or qualifying that, yes, there are at this point in time tens of thousands of people who've got their lives back, and how it became a major battle just to stay in existence. So we invite the listeners to join us for part number 2 as we come to a close of part number 1 here.
Thank you. And thanks for listening and participating.
Thank you, Dad, for going through some of this exhaustively. And by the way, there was elements to this that I wasn't even aware of. So really? I appreciate this. This is a rich history that you're sharing.
You're good at drawing it out, because you lose, not that you lose the memory, but it's in a box there, and you have to open that box again. No, this has been really good. This is very refreshing. It's exciting.
Awesome. So we'll see you for part number 2.